Welcome back. So what we have now is a health and an armor bar, which is not really interactive, which is set, which is not you know being changed at all. It simply uh, it simply sits at whatever values they were originally set at. That's it. So in this video, we're gonna do something like where we're gonna have a volume somewhere in the map, wherein when the player walks inside that volume, the armor is going to go from 100 to 1 to 0, and once that goes below 0, then the health is going to start depleting, and once the player moves away from that volume, then the armor is going to start regenerating. As simple as that. Okay. And now, the first thing is, before we actually go ahead and add the volume is not going to be seen at all. It could be anywhere. We could place it anywhere in the map, maybe here, maybe upstairs, anywhere. But we'll just place a volume which is not going to be seen. It's going to be invisible, but it will act as a trigger when the character walks into that volume. All our code is going to will start being called, right? So the first thing we have to do is we have to go back to the first person character. Okay, and wherever we set our event begin play, we will set a tick function here. The first thing is we will first look at the regeneration of the armor, which is the easy part, and but taking the damage away by 5% or 10% or 15%, depending on the volume that the player walks into, that's a little more involved. But we'll start off easy. We'll start off with the regeneration of the armor part, which is a hell lot easier than taking health away. So for that, I need the event tick node. So that will which gets called every single frame, which is built into every single blueprint. So this gets called every single frame. Okay. Now we want to restrict this. We first want to create a sequence node where we want to say you do this first and then you do that and then whatever. If you add more pins, then you can have as many nodes as you want, but I'm not going to do that. I just need one, maybe two, but not more than that. So once we have the sequence node, we're going to explain to the engine what we want to do first every frame. Okay. Okay, so the way this is going to work is, even though it runs every frame and we don't know how many frames it's going to run per second, but we'll limit this and we'll say, I just want this to run every second. Okay. Like out here, the default is 0.2, but we don't want that. It also depends on what you want. Like if you want 5% armor to be regenerated every 2 seconds, then you're going to be adding 2 here. Or if you want 10% armor to be generated every 2 seconds or 1 second, then you're going to add 1 here. So we're going to keep it simple, and we'll fix a percentage later. But I want this to run every second, and every second it's going to regenerate a certain amount of armor value, and it'll add to the existing one. But this only needs to be run when the armor when the armor is less than 1. Okay, so if it's full armor, then we should not we will not worry about it. Instead, and there's no point running this function when the armor is full. It cannot go beyond 100%. So we first will have to check whether the armor is less than 1. Okay, and we do that using a branch node, and from here I will pull out a wire and I'll look for float less than. Okay, so which narrows it down to float less than equals float and float less than equals to float. We need float less than float. Okay, and once that's there, I want to check whether the armor is less than 1, and if it is so, then we're going to run the regeneration code for the armor in the true execution part here. Okay, so now we want to check whether the armor is less than 1. So either you can drag this and drop it here, or you can drag off a pin and you can say get armor. Okay, and I want to check whether the armor is less than 1, and if it is, then I want the armor value to increase till the point it turns 1. Okay, and so out here I'm simply going to say I'll drag this and I drop it here and I'll say set armor. And what value do you want to set this by? I want to set this by I'll say float plus float. Okay, float plus float. Again, I want this to set the armor whatever the current value is. Out here, yeah, plus 1%. So that would be 0.01. There you go. So every 1 second, so if you have 0 armor and if you want to wait to see the armor to get full, then you'll have to wait 100 seconds. That's close to 2 minutes, 20 seconds less than 2 minutes, right? So that's how this would work. And if I compile that and let me see if the armor is 0 0.6, I'll bring it down to zero point 0.2. Okay, and I'll compile that and let's see if this thing works. I hit play and there you go. And if you can look at the yellow bar, I'll hit shift F1. If you look at the yellow bar, it's actually regenerating. So let's see and go back to 0. I'll make it a 0 armor, and then when I hit play, let's wait for 100 seconds and let's see that it's really working. So, and there you go. Okay, now we don't have a counter here, but this is just going to be ballpark figure, and it's pretty sure the maths can't go wrong. It's 1 second, 1%, and 0% of the armor, so it'll take 100 seconds to reach 100%, and then it'll stop adding armor to it, right? And let's just see. And right now it should be around point I don't know, 3.5 or 4% or something like that. We'll just wait for a minute more. Now that's the penalty you pay for losing armor. You have to run around and wait for the armor to regenerate. It cannot be even quicker than that. I mean, depends on what your game is. Maybe if you have some boost, or if you have some special powers, if your character has some special powers, then the armor regeneration can happen faster, but that completely depends on the design of your game. But right now we're just testing it out, so it's like 1% for 1 second, and that's good enough. So we'll just see how this works, and it's almost there. It should be around 70%. Just wait for a few seconds more, and once it hits, it's gonna stop regenerating. Okay, and let's see. And just to check that it works, what we'll do is armor, I'll just go for 0.8%. All right, so that we don't have to wait that long. If this is true, then we are running this. If it's false, then I'm gonna say print string, and I'll remove this off. I just want to test it out. I'll just say full armor, stop regeneration. Okay, that's the message. Now if I hit play and if I see, then it's 0.8%, and it should increase. And within a few seconds, I should be getting a message onto my top left, which says armor full, full armor, whatever the message that we put there. And a couple of seconds more, less than that. There you go. So it says full armor, stop regeneration, but it's going to happen every 1 second. That message is going to show up every 1 second. Okay, that's because that's because this loop is still running. After every second, if it comes down here, if it's less than 1, in fact, if it's less than 1, then it's going to come and do that. And also this duration is 2 seconds. So if I say 1 second, so that it stays exactly for the time where this is. So if I say that, and then I'll just wait for that, and then once we see that thing ticking and running fine, I'm gonna take off that debug message, and we'll move on for taking damage part. And there you go. And now 0.2 seconds later, they have the message. Okay, of course that thing is getting printed every single line, but that's okay. So it's working. At least we know that it's working. Great. Alright, so now I'll just get rid of this. We don't need this debug line anymore. Compile that. There you go. And now let's move on to the tougher part, where we will be taking damage away from the player. Okay, so now that we have this, let's create a new function, and I'll call this take damage 5%. Now you can have different slabs of take damage. Taking damage, this is 5%. Maybe that volume that we walked in was 5%, but there might be other stronger volumes which might take away 10%. Entirely depends on your design, but this is how it goes anyways. So every time this function gets called, I want to take 5% damage away from my armor. So I'm going to drag this armor here. I'm going to say set armor. First I'll connect this. Now this would be want to take away from the armor, so I'm going to say minus, and this would be float minus float. Okay, and again whatever the current armor value is, minus minus 5%. So 5% of 1 would be 0.05. Okay, so this reads every time you call this function, first get the armor, subtract it by minus 5, by subtract it, take 5% away from it, and reset it and reset the new value for the armor. That's how it reads. Okay, so now there's a chance that it will go beyond 0 or below 0, so we have to check that as well. And we're not going to stop that from happening, because we need that negative value, so that we'll use that for subtracting the health or taking the damage from the health itself other than the armor. Okay, and so now I will look for a branch node, and what do we want to check? We want to check whether this is less than a certain value. So less than, that would be float less than float. That's what we want. So we'll see whether this is less than some value, and what is that value. Whatever armor we set after that, we want to check whether that's less than 0. And if it is so,